What happens when a beloved late-night host faces off against royalty, gone rogue in an interview that spirals completely out of control? It only took one comment about Hollywood privilege for Prince Harry to explode in a tirade that would end with him being escorted off the set in front of a shocked studio audience. This is the story of the most explosive talk show moment in recent television history. Jimmy Kimmel sat behind his desk that evening, his signature friendly smile lighting up the stage as the audience settled into their seats. The energy in the room was electric. Prince Harry was scheduled to appear, and everyone expected a light-hearted conversation about his life in California, maybe some jokes about adjusting to American culture, perhaps a funny story or two about his kids. Nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold. The interview started normally enough. Harry walked out to thunderous applause, waving to the crowd as he made his way to the guest chair. He sat down, crossed his legs, and exchanged pleasantries with Jimmy. The first few minutes were smooth. They talked about the weather in Los Angeles, about how Harry was settling into life in Montecito, about his favorite American foods. "So, you've been here for a while now," Jimmy said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "What's been the biggest adjustment for you?" Harry smiled, but there was something slightly off about it. Something tight around the edges. "Well, it's been interesting. Different. Very different from what I'm used to." "I can imagine," Jimmy replied. "Going from palace life to, regular California living. That's got to be quite a change." The audience chuckled. It was an innocent observation, the kind of gentle ribbing that happens on every talk show. But Harry's expression shifted. His smile faded just a fraction. "Regular?" Harry repeated, his tone suddenly cooler. "I wouldn't call my life regular, Jimmy." There was a brief pause. Jimmy, ever the professional, tried to keep things light. "Well, I just meant, compared to being a working royal. No offense intended." "None taken," Harry said, though his voice suggested otherwise. "But I think there's this misconception that I somehow downgraded my life, that I left something better for something lesser." The audience grew quieter. This wasn't the fun, breezy conversation they'd been expecting. Jimmy shifted in his seat, clearly picking up on the tension, but still trying to steer things back to safer ground. "I don't think anyone sees it that way," Jimmy said carefully. "I think people admire that you chose your own path. That takes courage." "Courage?" Harry said, almost laughing. "That's a nice way to put it. You know what really takes courage, Jimmy? Standing up to an entire institution. Standing up to the most powerful family in the world. That's courage." Jimmy nodded, trying to stay supportive. "Absolutely. And you've been open about how difficult that was." "Have I?" Harry leaned back in his chair, his posture becoming more defensive. "Because every time I'm open about it, people like you make jokes. You turn it into entertainment." The atmosphere in the studio changed instantly. You could feel the collective intake of breath from the audience. Jimmy's face registered surprise, but he kept his composure. "Hold on," Jimmy said, his voice still friendly but firmer now. "I've never made jokes at your expense, Harry. We've been nothing but respectful to you on this show." "Respectful?" Harry's voice rose slightly. "You had a whole segment last month about royals in America. Don't think I didn't see that." Jimmy blinked. "That was a comedy bit about the differences between British and American culture. It wasn't personal. It wasn't even about you specifically." "Everything is about me specifically," Harry shot back. "Every time you talk about royals in Hollywood, you're talking about me. Every time you make some quip about people leaving their families for fame, you're talking about me." The accusation hung in the air. Jimmy took a breath, and you could see him making a choice. He could back down, smooth things over, move on to the next topic. Or he could address this directly. He chose the latter. "Harry, I'm going to be straight with you," Jimmy said, his tone shifting from jovial host to something more real. I think you might be projecting a little bit here. We make jokes about everything and everyone on this show. Presidents, celebrities, myself included. That's what we do. But we've never singled you out or tried to hurt you. You don't get it, Harry said, shaking his head. You couldn't possibly get it. You sit here in your comfortable studio, making your comfortable salary, living your comfortable American life. You have no idea what it's like to have the entire world watching your every move, judging everything you do. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Jimmy responded, and there was an edge to his voice now. You're right. I don't know what it's like to be a prince, Jimmy said, but I do know what it's like to work hard for what I have. And I know that everyone in this building, everyone in this audience, works hard for what they have too. Nobody's life is as comfortable as you seem to think. Harry stood up suddenly, startling everyone. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The lack of respect. The complete inability to understand perspective. Sit down, Harry, Jimmy said, his voice calm but commanding. Let's talk about this like adults. Don't tell me what to do, Harry snapped. You're not my father. You're not my brother. You're just another American talk show host who thinks he knows everything about everyone. The audience was dead silent now. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked shocked. All eyes were on the stage, watching this surreal confrontation unfold. Jimmy stood up too, facing Harry across the desk. You came on my show, Harry. You agreed to be here. If you're going to sit in that chair and insult me, insult my staff, insult my audience, then maybe you should leave. Maybe I should, Harry said, his face flushed. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe all of this was a mistake. All of what? Jimmy asked. This, Harry gestured around wildly. This world. These people. This country. Everyone here thinks they're so enlightened, so progressive, so accepting. But you're all the same. You're all waiting for me to fail. You're all hoping I'll prove you right. Jimmy's expression hardened. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair? Harry laughed bitterly. You want to talk to me about fair? Let me tell you about fair, Jimmy. Fair is being born into a role you never asked for. Fair is having photographers chase your mother to her death. Fair is watching your family throw you to the wolves to protect themselves. Don't lecture me about fair. I'm not lecturing you, Jimmy said, his voice rising slightly now. But you can't use your trauma as an excuse to treat people badly. Everyone's got problems, Harry. Everyone's dealing with something. That doesn't give you the right to come on my show and act like you're better than everyone else. Better than everyone? Harry's voice was getting louder. I never said that. I never implied that. All I've ever wanted is to be treated like a human being, to have my privacy respected, to live my life without constant scrutiny. Then why do you keep courting it? Jimmy asked, and the question landed like a bomb. Why do you keep doing interviews, writing books, appearing on shows like this? If you want privacy, go be private. But you can't have it both ways. Harry's face went red. How dare you? How dare you question my motives? You don't know anything about my life. You don't know what I've been through. You're right, I don't, Jimmy said. But I know what I see. And what I see is someone who claims to want one thing, but does another. Someone who says they want to be left alone, but can't stop talking about themselves. The words hung in the air like a slap. Harry stared at Jimmy, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. This interview is over, Harry said through gritted teeth. Fine by me, Jimmy replied, crossing his arms. Harry turned to walk off stage, but then he stopped. He turned back around, pointing at Jimmy with a shaking finger. You know what your problem is? Harry said, his voice trembling with anger. Your problem is that you're a small person with a small mind doing a small job. You make fun of people for a living because you have nothing else to offer. No real talent. No real insight. Just cheap laughs for cheap people. The audience gasped. Several people actually stood up, looking offended. Jimmy's jaw clenched, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Are you done?" Jimmy asked quietly. "No, I'm not done," Harry continued, seemingly unable to stop himself. "Now, you sit here in your late-night throne, thinking you're so clever, thinking you're so important, but you're nothing. You're nobody. In a year, no one will remember your name. But me, I'll be remembered forever. That's the difference between us, Jimmy. I matter. You don't." The studio erupted. Some people were booing now. Others were shouting. Security guards were already moving toward the stage. Jimmy just stood there, shaking his head slowly. "You need to leave," Jimmy said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Right now." "Oh, I'm leaving," Harry said, backing toward the exit. "But not because you told me to. Because I choose to. Because I don't waste my time with people beneath me." "Beneath you?" Jimmy's voice finally showed real anger. "Listen to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. This is exactly what people criticize you for. This entitled, elitist attitude. You left the royal family to escape that world, but you brought it with you. You can't let it go." Harry took a step forward, his face contorted with rage. "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You're a comedian, not a therapist. Stick to your stupid jokes and leave the real thinking to people who are actually qualified." Security was on the stage now, two large men in suits positioning themselves between Harry and Jimmy. One of them put a hand on Harry's arm. "Sir, we need you to leave the stage," the security guard said firmly. Harry jerked his arm away. "Don't touch me. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir," the guard said patiently. "We need you to leave anyway." Jimmy watched from behind his desk, his expression a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. The audience was in complete uproar now, some people recording on their phones, others just staring in shock. "This is assault," Harry said, even though no one was touching him. "This is an attack. You're all witnesses. He provoked me. He insulted me first." "Harry, go home," Jimmy said, his voice tired now. "Just go home." "I don't—" "Take orders from you," Harry spat, but he was moving toward the exit now, flanked by security guards. "This show is garbage anyway. Your ratings are garbage. You're garbage." He disappeared through the side stage door, his voice still echoing as he went. The audience sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, people started to applaud. It started small, just a few people clapping, but it grew. Soon the entire studio was on its feet, applauding Jimmy, who stood at his desk looking somewhat shell-shocked. He raised a hand, asking for quiet. It took a minute, but eventually the applause died down and people returned to their seats. "Well," Jimmy said, running a hand through his hair, "that was unexpected." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. "I want to say something," Jimmy continued, his voice serious. "I didn't want that to happen. I never want any guest to leave my show angry or upset. But I also can't sit here and let someone insult you, my staff, and everyone who works hard to make this show happen." The audience applauded again. "We treat everyone with respect here," Jimmy went on. "Whether you're a prince or a plumber, you get the same courtesy. But respect goes both ways. And if someone comes on this show and disrespects us, well, you saw what happens." More applause, louder this time. "I hope Harry finds whatever peace he's looking for," Jimmy said, and he sounded sincere. "I really do. But that kind of behavior, that kind of entitlement, it's not acceptable. Not here. Not anywhere." The audience gave him a standing ovation. Jimmy smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. You could tell he was shaken by what had just happened. "We're going to take a quick break," Jimmy said. "When we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of this show. Maybe bring out a cute animal or something to lighten the mood." The band played them to commercial, and the cameras cut away. But in the studio, People were still talking, still processing what they'd just witnessed. Some were laughing in disbelief. Others looked genuinely upset. The energy had completely changed from the beginning of the show. Backstage, you could hear raised voices. Harry was apparently still there, still arguing with someone. The sound of doors slamming, more shouting. Then finally, mercifully, silence. When the show came back from commercial, Jimmy had composed himself. His smile was back, though perhaps a bit more forced than usual. He made a few jokes about needing a vacation, about maybe screening his guests more carefully in the future. The audience laughed, grateful for the return to normalcy. But nobody in that studio would forget what they'd seen. The moment when a prince lost his composure. The moment when entitlement met reality. The moment when someone who claimed to want normalcy revealed just how far from normal he really was. Jimmy handled it with grace. He didn't gloat. He didn't mock Harry after he left. He simply stood his ground, defended his team, and moved on. That's what good people do. They don't escalate. They don't seek revenge. They maintain their dignity even when others lose theirs. And that's what made the contrast so stark. On one side, you had a talk show host who had built his career through hard work, humor, and genuine connection with his audience. Someone who understood that respect is earned, not demanded. Someone who knew that treating people well is just basic human decency. On the other side, you had someone who seemed unable to escape the shadow of his own grievances. Someone who saw slights where none existed. Someone who, when challenged even slightly, responded with disproportionate anger and personal attacks. Someone who invoked his status when it suited him, while simultaneously claiming to reject that very status. The whole exchange lasted maybe 10 minutes from start to finish. 10 minutes that felt like an hour. 10 minutes that revealed so much about both men. Involved. For Jimmy, it revealed his character under pressure. His willingness to stand up for himself and his team. His refusal to be bullied or intimidated. His ability to remain relatively calm in the face of increasing hostility. These aren't easy things to do, especially on live television, especially when the person attacking you is famous and powerful. For Harry, it revealed the disconnect between his stated values and his actual behavior. He talks about wanting to be normal, but pulls rank when challenged. He talks about respecting others, but hurls insults when he doesn't get his way. He talks about leaving behind toxic environments, but creates toxicity wherever he goes. The audience saw it. They saw the difference between someone who has earned their place through talent and hard work, and someone who was born into privilege and can't quite figure out how to exist without it. They saw someone who treats everyone the same, and someone who thinks they deserve special treatment. It wasn't about being royal or not royal. It wasn't about being British or American. It was about basic human decency, about how you treat people, about whether you can handle criticism or disagreement without losing control. Jimmy passed that test. Harry failed it spectacularly. In the moments after Harry left, as the show struggled to regain its footing, you could see the impact on everyone involved. The crew members looked uncomfortable. The band seemed uncertain. The audience was buzzing with whispered conversations. Everyone was processing what they'd just witnessed. But Jimmy pushed through. He brought out his next guest, who had been waiting backstage through all the drama. He cracked jokes. He did his job. Because that's what professionals do. They don't let one bad experience derail everything else. They don't let someone else's meltdown become their own. There was something almost admirable about his resilience, about his ability to compartmentalize and move forward. In a weird way, the whole incident actually made him more likable, more human, because everyone has dealt with difficult people. Everyone has been in a situation where someone treats them unfairly or lashes out inappropriately. Seeing Jimmy handle it with grace and firmness gave people a kind of vicarious satisfaction. The conversation between them kept replaying in people's minds. The escalation, the accusations, the insults, each exchange revealing more about who these two men really were. When Harry said, "Don't tell me what to do," he wasn't just rejecting Jimmy's request to sit down. He was rejecting the idea that anyone had the right to expect basic courtesy from him. When Jimmy responded by suggesting Harry should leave if he was going to be disrespectful, he was drawing a line, saying that fame doesn't excuse bad behavior. When Harry accused Jimmy of making jokes at his expense, he was revealing his own insecurity, his belief that everything is about him, his inability to separate gentle comedy from personal attack. When Jimmy pointed out that they joke about everyone, he was highlighting the absurdity of expecting special treatment. When Harry started insulting Jimmy's career, calling him a small person with a small mind, he showed his true colors. Because when you can't win an argument on merit, you attack the person. You try to diminish them. You reach for whatever weapon you think will hurt most. And when Jimmy refused to engage with those insults, when he simply asked Harry to leave, he demonstrated real strength. Because it's easy to fight fire with fire. It's much harder to stay calm when someone is trying to provoke you. But that's what separates people who have real confidence from people who are just performing it. The whole incident could be studied as a masterclass in conflict resolution, or rather, in what happens when one person tries to resolve a conflict and the other person refuses to participate in good faith. Jimmy offered multiple off-ramps, multiple opportunities to de-escalate. Each one was rejected. He could have agreed when Harry first got defensive, could have moved to a different topic, but he also could have pushed back harder when Harry started making accusations, could have been sarcastic or dismissive. Instead, he tried to find a middle path, acknowledging Harry's feelings while also standing up for himself. It didn't work, but not because Jimmy did anything wrong. It didn't work because Harry wasn't interested in having a conversation. He was interested in having a fight. And once someone decides they want to fight, there's not much you can do to stop them. What made it even more uncomfortable was the public nature of it all. These weren't two people arguing in private. This was happening in front of hundreds of people in the studio, and potentially millions watching at home. The stakes were higher. The pressure was greater. And yet Jimmy managed to maintain his composure, while Harry completely lost his. That's the thing about live television. It reveals who you really are. You can prepare talking points. You can rehearse stories. But when something unexpected happens, when the script goes out the window, your true nature emerges. And what emerged from Harry was not flattering. His complaints about being judged, about being under scrutiny, rang hollow when he was the one who agreed to appear on a talk show. Nobody forced him to be there. Nobody made him sit in that chair. He chose it. And then he got angry when the experience wasn't exactly what he wanted it to be. There's a word for that kind of behavior. Entitlement. The belief that the world should bend to your expectations. That other people exist to serve your needs. That when reality doesn't match your desires, reality is wrong. Jimmy didn't display entitlement. He didn't demand that Harry agree with him, or like him, or praise him. He just asked for basic respect. And when he didn't get it, he enforced a boundary. That's healthy. That's normal. That's what people should do. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. One man who had everything given to him. One man who had to earn everything. One man who thinks respect is his birthright. One man who knows respect is something you give and receive through your actions. As the show wound down that night, as the final guests departed, and the audience filtered out into the Los Angeles evening, the talk was all about what had happened. People were already pulling out their phones, texting friends, posting on social media. The video would be everywhere within hours. And Jimmy? He probably went home, had a drink, and tried to process what had happened. Maybe called his wife. Maybe talked to his producers. Maybe just sat in silence for a while. Because here's the thing that gets lost in all of this. Jimmy didn't want this to happen. He wasn't trying to create drama. He wasn't looking for a viral moment. He was trying to do his job, have a nice conversation, give his audience a fun show. And instead, he got attacked by someone who couldn't handle the most basic, gentle pushback. That's exhausting. Even when you handle it well, even when you come out looking good, it's still draining. It still takes something out of you. Because most people, most good people, don't like conflict. They don't enjoy confrontation. They do it when necessary, but they don't seek it out. Harry sought it out. Whether consciously or not, he came to that interview looking for a fight. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe he was dealing with personal issues. Maybe he's just reached a point where his resentment and anger have consumed him. Whatever the reason, he brought that energy to the stage, and it poisoned everything. And that's the saddest part of all this. It didn't have to happen. It could have been a pleasant conversation. Harry could have laughed at himself, shared some good stories, connected with the audience. Instead, he created an enemy where there wasn't one. He turned a friendly interview into a battleground. He made everyone in that studio uncomfortable and unhappy. For what? To prove a point? To show he won't be pushed around? To demonstrate his independence? If those were his goals, he failed. Because what he actually demonstrated was that he's not ready for the normal life he claims to want. Normal people don't explode at talk show hosts for making innocent observations. Normal people don't throw tantrums when conversations don't go exactly their way. Jimmy showed what normal looks like. Professional, respectful, firm when necessary, but never cruel. Willing to listen, but also willing to draw boundaries. That's how functional adults behave in the world. That's how you navigate disagreements without destroying relationships. The audience understood this instinctively. That's why they applauded Jimmy and booed Harry. Not because they were starstruck or biased, but because they recognized good behavior and bad behavior. When they saw it, they saw someone trying to do their job well and someone making that job impossible. They saw someone maintaining their dignity and someone losing theirs completely. And in the end, that's what this story is really about. Not about royalty or television or fame, but about character. About who you are when things don't go your way. About how you treat people when you're frustrated or angry or hurt. About whether you can rise above your worst impulses or whether you let them control you. Jimmy rose above. Harry didn't, and that made all the difference.